Here we are, students, part 3 of chapter 5, digital security, computer security. Here we're going to start by talking about ethics and society. Well, first of all, ethics is not just a digital problem. It's a worldwide challenge. It's a worldwide problem. We hear it each day. Leaders of companies, leaders of countries who have lied, who have done unethical things. And of course, that transfers over into the idea of technology ethics, which are moral guidelines that govern the use of computers, mobile devices, information systems, and of course the related technology. And if everyone in the world was ethical, wouldn't that be great? There would be no hacking, there would be no viruses. We would all just live like one big happy family, on the big I internet. So what this does mean, though, down to the most basic level, is, as it says here, Captain Obvious. Not all information on the internet is correct. And that's very true. And that, of course, is a challenge. Here's a great Photoshop. Looks like an apple on the outside. It's going to taste like an orange on the end. So definitely when we talk about information on the web, we need to make sure that we confirm the source in multiple locations, multiple sites on the internet. Very important. So this includes intellectual property, which refers to the unique original works such as ideas, inventions, art, writings, processes, recordings, logos. That's all intellectual property, and there's rights associated with those. When I create a custom logo for my company, I expect that you're not going to steal it. And of course, we see this all the time where there's a popular logo, a popular something, and I'll make my logo look just a little bit like theirs so that I pick up all of their cred, if you will. Intellectual property are the rights to which creators are entitled. So when we talk about copyrights or owning a digital copyright or owning any copyright, you may be aware that intellectual property now, like a song, is owned by the songwriter for 72 years after their death. Okay, so someone else would take over their rights, obviously. Recent example, just go up and there was a company that said they had the digital rights, that they had the copyright laws to the song Happy Birthday, and it was determined by a federal judge that that wasn't correct. But talk about unethical. Well, there's a song on the web, you can download it for, quote, fingers in the air, free. If you went to the store to buy it, or if you went to iTunes, or if you went to Google Play Music, you're going to spend $1.29.99 for the song. But you can download it for free. And let's face it, who's going to catch you downloading music off the internet? Does that make it ethical? So yes, I'm meaning right now to challenge your personal ethics as it pertains to what you do on the web. This includes the idea of, trying to remain anonymous on the web, saying things you shouldn't say. There is definitely a code of conduct. We've actually seen YouTube really stick by their code of conduct, which is in that agreement that you signed to use YouTube, to stick by it and say, okay, these videos are really unacceptable. Now, some people are saying, no, wait a minute, the internet, it's a Wild West. It's freedom of speech. You can say, you can do anything you want on the internet. But wait a minute, there are laws associated with the internet, and that's simply not true. There are laws, and of course, even without laws, there are ethics. There is a code of conduct by which we all basically, adhere to, if you will. Even if it's not a law, okay? Whatever the case may be, you're out playing basketball with your buddies and you push somebody too many times. The rest of your friends might say, you know what? Don't know what's going on with you today, but you can't play basketball with us the rest of the day, or maybe ever again. It's the same thing here. Sample code of conduct, technology may not be used to harm other people. Employees may not meddle with other files. You get the idea. The fact is, if you just ask that question, is this something that I should be doing? Is this ethical? And you can honestly answer yourself, you're not going to make too many mistakes utilizing the internet and digital content. Green computing, so involves reducing the electricity and environmental waste while using computers, mobile devices, and related technologies. Now, Frankly, this does sound like a good thing. It benefits the earth and the ozone, and we have made, definitely manufacturers have made great strides in making more energy efficient computers. Thus, the same battery that might have lasted 3 hours in a computer 5 years ago is lasting 8 hours today. However, this idea of reducing environmental waste, all we really need to do is look at cell phone companies and say, are you really doing your part to reduce environmental waste? If you notice, nobody's making a phone like computers where we can, continue to use it, upgrade. They're constantly trying to get us the new hardware, the faster hardware, etc. Where does all that old hardware go? Where did the last 3 cell phones that you owned go? The fact is, a lot of them go overseas, and are reused and repurposed, and that's a great thing. But a lot of them end up in some sort of waste, e-waste, for example. So, information privacy, as it says, refers to the right of individuals and companies to deny or restrict the collection, use, and dissemination of information about them. The fact is, folks, when you sign up for Facebook, you are giving Facebook rights to use the information that you post on Facebook. Hey, I'm going to Hawaii next month. They're going to use that information to market things to do in Hawaii next month while you're there. If you don't want that information, if you want to remain private, simply put, it's going to be hard to interact, especially with social media on the web. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't use pay for services, pay for email, pay for things where, because you're paying and there's a means for the company to make a revenue, they're not going to sell that data or share that data with trusted partners in order to make money. But there are huge databases. Google definitely has databases on all of us. Websites often collect data about you so that they can customize advertisements, send you personal emails. Hey, happy birthday, here's $10 off your next $100 purchase. Some employers monitor your computer usage and email. If you're not aware, COCC has a policy as to what you can do. And when you signed up for a network account, you're agreeing to that policy. There's certain sites you're not going to visit, certain practices you're not going to conduct while on COCC resources. Clearly, they're there for education. Education is the priority. And frankly, it's going to become cost prohibitive in the future with how many people are sitting around classes watching Netflix between classes. Is that really what COCC should be paying for? It's possible that we end up with higher technology fees in order to support the extra cost that's needed for bandwidth that has really not much to do with education. Now, of course, that's a challenge because we can't block YouTube. You wouldn't be watching this video from campus, for example. How to safeguard your personal information. We've talked about a lot of this already. Look for that HTTPS. Read those agreements and end user license agreements when you sign up and you download software. If they're going to share your information, it's going to say it right there. And frankly, folks, if you haven't read the agreement that you agreed to before using Facebook, you might go back and do that. Not sure, not looking to change your mind on Facebook. Just because I'm not using Facebook doesn't mean it's not a great resource, etc. But just keep in mind, there are ways to secure your account and further secure your account so that only the people you've agreed to be, quote, friends with are going to see that information. But also keep in mind that a friend of a friend who you're not connected with could be sitting in front of a computer at that other friend's house, and they could be looking at your profile because you friended one of those people, but not the other. So here's a list. Definitely pause. Take a minute, read this. Moving on. So information about you can be stored in a database. Fill out a printed or online form. That information is stored in the database. When you give someone your email to sign up for something, that's stored in a database. Create a profile on an online social network. Again, stored in a database. Register for a product warranty online. Stored in a database. a lot of people will ask, well, okay, so this information is stored in a database for how long? Well, as long as the company wants to keep it. And the fact is, the longer time, for example, the longer the time that a company stores information about you, the better they can profile you. For example, Amazon, I've been a customer since I think 2003, something like that. They have all that information, all my purchases. They know they might even know what I'm going to buy next before I buy it, for example. And I'm sure you all have seen this. You go out to your favorite online shopping site. Because they sent you an ad, you clicked on something. It said, oh, you got to add it to the cart to see the price. They want you that much closer to the purchase. You add it to the cart. You don't complete the transaction. A few hours or a few days later, hey, this is in your cart. And you know what? If you process it in the next 10 minutes, we'll give you an additional 10% off. Folks, that's the way it is on the internet. When we talk about privacy, we need to mention cookie. And I'm not talking about my favorite, which is chocolate chip cookies, barely baked. I want them to, fold over in my hand. We're talking about a small digital text file that a web server stores on your computer. And originally, these were good things because websites use those cookies to personalize or customize the website for you. So if there's places you always go and you go to that website, that cookie says, oh, they never look at X, Y, they always go to Z. So let's start them at Z. Let's make it more convenient. However, with that as well, there's what's called tracking cookies. And those cookies, which if you have virus protection or internet security programs, they're going to constantly delete those because those allow those websites to see where you're going, how long you're on a page, what you might have clicked on, how you got there, etc. That gives them better targeted information to do things like, yes, assist you with shopping, track how often you use the site, most important, target advertisements to you. So if I'm Amazon and you're constantly looking at electronics, marketing clothes to you is not going to get a sale. But if I market electronics, things that you've similarly looked at, things that are similar to things you've purchased in the past, maybe upgraded products of products you've already purchased, those are the things that are going to catch your eye and have you open your digital wallet. So how cookies work, you can read this, enter address, etc. That file comes down. Browser finds a cookie. It sends information to the cookie file to the website. If the website does not receive the cookie information it's expecting, the website creates an identical number for you in its database and sends that number to your browser. Now, tracking cookies, by the way, can also be multi-site. Okay, so there's an organization called DoubleClick, and companies sign up for DoubleClick and they start compiling all this information about you, whether you're on Amazon, whether you're on Bing, whether you went out to Target site, Costco site, etc. A big tracking information file on you. Now, why is this important? It's important because now if I have that bigger file on you, I can create better things to market to you. Okay, so by combining those cookies, and if you're not aware, DoubleClick is actually owned by Google. So Google gets money for putting all of these companies and all the information about you together and sharing it across all these companies who have subscribed to DoubleClick and to tracking cookies. Again, I'm trying to keep this information basic. We're not going to get into the technical details of how things work. That is other classes. That is if you're going into IT or computer information systems. Phishing. Well, just like it sounds, throw a pole in the water, see what you catch. It's a scam in which a perpetrator sends an official-looking email message. That's called a phishing email, also called a spear phishing. The difference is a phishing email is something I might send out to thousands of people hoping to catch a few. A spear phishing email is where I'm after a specific type of fish, a specific type of person. Maybe I'm even after you. I'm sending an email right to you because I know that you're the person that pays bills and writes checks for this company. And I'm going to tell you I'm a vendor who I know just came into your company. You need to pay me. here's my bank account number, please transfer the funds immediately. You don't check that. It looks legit to you. You go through, and then pretty soon you're the person responsible, as we've discussed, at Southern Oregon University, who sent $1.9 million to what they thought was a contractor's bank account, but it was not the contractor's bank account. So granted, that's a huge thing. But there's other spear phishing, the one in Redmond, where someone sent all the W-2s for over 1,000 employees to someone on the internet. Because they made it look like they were someone in the organization when really they weren't. Clickjacking, an object that can be tapped or clicked on a website, contains a malicious program. Basically, it can do things like hijack your computer. It can install spyware. It can install adware. Talk a little bit more about those. We've already talked about those in the previous. You kind of get the idea of the difference. If not, go ahead and pause, remind yourself, and read again. Now, here's my favorite. It is called social engineering. So this is really hacking before you're able to hack. It's defined as gaining unauthorized access to or obtaining confidential information by taking advantage of a trusting human nature of some victims and, the naivety of others. So people who don't know, people who haven't been trained, like those folk, like that person that sent out 1.9 million, had they have had some training on phishing scams, some training on security, they might have thought, you know what, we have a policy here at work, maybe even trained on policy, that we don't respond to bank accounts sent through email. We call the vendor directly. We confirm that it's the vendor. We get the information from a real person there. We then double check it before we send out any money over $500, for example. I like social engineering. I used to have a shirt that said social engineering. And then on the back it said, because there's no patch for human stupidity. And frankly, folks, in most cases, it's not stupidity. It's the lack of knowledge. It's the lack of education. It's the lack of training. We see these where you might get an email from someone that says, there's an issue with your email. I'll give you an example. Just the other day, someone who has been trained, whose mind was on it, sent me an email from a company and said, hey, look at this. This was an email that looked like it might have been from Microsoft regarding Office 365 and their email account being full. However, when you moused over and you looked at the URL of where you were going to be taken if you click, it was in Jordan, in a completely different country. Had they have clicked on that, which when I sent it, I created a secure environment so I could click on it. It took me to a website that looked exactly like the login site for Office 365, just like the one you all use to log in. But it wasn't that site. And all they wanted me to do was put in my username and my password so that they could steal that from me. That's an idea of social engineering, where I get you so comfortable you give me the information. Another example might be I call up a company. I say I'm from the internet service provider. They know that I know they use Ben Broadband. I say, hey, this is Eric from Ben Broadband. We're looking for the IP address on your router. Can you please provide that to me? We're unable to see that currently. We want to make sure that your service is up and running. And the person uses, oh, well, yeah, let me transfer you. Well, who can help you with that? Oh, well, they're gone. Oh, well, let me tell you how you can get it for me real quick, just so I can make sure your internet doesn't go down. And wouldn't you know, people will give you that information if they haven't been trained not to do it. Another example would be here at the college. The IT department is never going to ask you for usernames and passwords over email. Never. If they need that information from you for something, they're going to contact you. You're going to meet with someone in person. Information privacy. So the concern about privacy on the web, however, yeah, we've enacted federal and state laws regarding storage and disclosure of personal data. If I lose your data or your data's hacked, I have to notify you. In the state of Oregon, by the way, it's 250 records, where if I lose up to 200 or 250 people's personal data via a hack, I have to notify you according to state law. And by the way, if I don't, and it's found out later that we were hacked and the information came from my business and it caused you to lose money or lose time or lose your credit, the state can actually fine me $1,000 per record. That means per customer. So in that case, if I lost 250 records, I could be out $250,000 and perhaps jail time. So a lot of times when we talk about monitoring, when you're using someone else's resource, someone else's computer, a company, for example, someone else's internet, someone else's network, in that end user license agreement or employment agreement, they might be monitoring you. They're going to tell you they are. They need to tell you that they are, but they might say, we're going to look once in a while and see what websites you're visiting, how often you're there, do they relate to work? We're going to have security cameras that record you coming in and out of the building, for example, all the way down to we might look at your email messages because you're supposed to be using our company's email, not for personal, but for business only, and thus conducting yourself according to our schedule. Now, folks, some companies have even gone so far as to say if you're on social media and you work for our company, you are not to mention any person at this company. You're not to mention the company that you work for. You can maybe put in there that you work for the company, but you're not to discuss the company, disclose anything about the company, whether it's positive or negative on social media. Content filtering. So one of the things that we can do with some advanced equipment, advanced firewalls, is block content, which means if I know people are going to Facebook, I can block www.facebook.com. If that's not related to your job and function, I can block that so people don't spend half their day that we're paying them $30 an hour to do some professional job to be on Facebook and surf the web. Now, that may seem rude, but wait a minute. Just do the math. Let's say that a minimum wage employee, instead of working an hour a day, surf the web for an hour a day, and I was paying them $10 an hour to do that. I'm suddenly paying them $50 an hour to surf the web of my time. And if they work for me, that's so $50 a week, times, say they work for me for 50 weeks, they're not going to surf the web while on vacation, but they suddenly just wasted $2,500 that I was paying them to do work surfing the web. Same thing with web filtering and software. We can block malicious sites. So folks, that's the end of the lecture here for Chapter 5, Part 3. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope it's given you some ideas on how to better secure your digital life, your use of social media, your computer, and your data, because that's what's important. Take care.